So chapter 6, and we're back to a flashback here again. There was a new boy at the pool today, I told my parents that long ago night after the incident while Xander and I were swimming. I was careful to leave out any mention of Xander losing his tablet container. I didn't want him to get in trouble. The omission felt like the tablet itself was stuck in my throat. Every time I swallowed, I felt it catch there, threatening to choke me. So she's talking about the lie. Even though she's not lying to them, she's leaving something out, so she's omitting it. She's keeping it secret, that's right. But still, I didn't tell. My parents exchanged glances. A new boy? Are you sure? My father asked. I'm sure, I said. His name is Kai Markham. Xander and I swam with him. He's staying with the Markhams, then, my father said. They've adopted him, I told my parents. He calls Ada his mother and Patrick his father. I heard him. My parents exchanged glances. Adoptions were and are virtually unheard of in our province of Oria. We heard a knock at the door. Stay here, Kasia, my father said. Let us see who it is. I waited back in the kitchen, but I heard Xander's father, Mr. Caro, at the door, his deep, loud voice booming through the foyer. We aren't allowed to go into one another's residences, but I could imagine him standing there on the steps, looking like an older version of Xander. Same blonde hair, same laughing blue eyes. So we just learned another rule. What's this rule? Yeah, you can't go in other people's houses. How often do you go into a good friend's house?
A lot.
They're not allowed to. I talked with Patrick and Ada Markham, he said. I thought you'd want to know. The boy is an orphan. He's from the outer provinces. He is? My mother's voice held a note of concern. The outer provinces are on the geographic fringe of the society where life is harder and wilder. Sometimes people refer to them as the lesser provinces, or the backward provinces, because they have so little order and knowledge there. There's a higher concentration of aberrations there than in the general populace, and even anomalies, some say, though no one knows for certain where the anomalies are. They used to be kept in safe houses, but many of those stand empty these days. So again, we have those two words, aberration and anomaly. Do you remember what they mean? So an aberration, we know that Kai is an aberration. Why is he an aberration?
Because he's getting punished for his father's mistake.
Yep, he's getting punished for his father's mistake, right? So somehow something was done, probably against the society, that got his dad in trouble, and in turn got Kai in trouble. So now he's an aberration. So he doesn't have as many freedoms as the rest of society, right? Because what couldn't he do? Yeah, he can't be matched. If you're an anomaly, that would be like his father. So he's been basically kicked out of society. So he doesn't have any of the privileges that other people get. He's here with full society approval, Mr. Caro said. Patrick showed me the paperwork himself. He told me to tell anyone else who might be concerned. I knew you'd be worried, Molly, and you too, Abram. Well then, my mother said, it sounds all right. I edged around the corner to look into the foyer where my parents' backs were to me, and Xander's father stood on the steps with the knight behind him. Then Xander's father dropped his voice, and I had to listen closely to hear what he said over the low hum of the port in the foyer. Molly, you should have seen Ada and Patrick. They seemed alive again. The boy is Ada's nephew, her sister's son. My mother's hand went up to her hair, a gesture she always made when she was uncomfortable, because we all remembered vividly what had happened to the Markhams. It was a rare case of government failure. A Class 1 anomaly should never have been unidentified, let alone allowed to roam the streets, to sneak into the government offices where Patrick worked and where his son was visiting him that day. We all kept quiet about it, but we all knew, because the Markham boy was gone. Murdered while he waited for his father to come back for a meeting elsewhere in the building, because Patrick Markham himself had to spend time being healed, since the anomaly waited in the office, quiet, and attacked Patrick, too. Her nephew, my mother said, her voice filled with empathy. Of course Ada would want to raise him. And the government might feel like they owed it to Patrick to make an exception for him, my father said. Abram, my mother said reproachfully, but Xander's father agreed. It's logical, an exception as recompense for the accident, a son to replace the one they shouldn't have had to lose. That's how the officials see it. Later, my mother came to my room to tuck me in. With her voice soft like the blanket, she settled around me. She asked, "Did you hear us talking?" "Yes," I said. "The Markham's nephew, son, starts school tomorrow." "Kai," I said. "That's his name." "Yes," she said. She bent down and her long blonde hair swung over her shoulder, and her freckles looked like the stars scattered across her skin. She smiled at me. "You'll be nice to him, won't you?" she asked, "and help him fit in? It might be hard to be new when everyone else belongs." "I will," I promised. As it turned out, her advice was unnecessary. The next day at second school, Kai said hello and introduced himself to everyone. Quiet and quick, he moved through the halls. He told everyone who he was so that no one had to ask. When the bell rang, he disappeared into the groups of students. It was shocking how quickly he vanished. He was there 1 minute, separate and distinct and new, and then he became part of the crowd, as though he had done it all his life, as if he had never lived anywhere but here. And that's how it's always been with Kai. I realize now, looking back, we have always seen him swimming along the surface. Only that first day did we see him dive deep. "I have something to tell you," I say to Grandfather as I pull up a chair next to him. The officials didn't keep me too long at the game center after I stepped on the tablets. I still have enough time for a visit. I'm grateful, because this is the second to the last time that I will visit him. The thought makes me feel hollow. Snow are back in present tense, right? She was just at the game center, she stepped on the tablets, the officials questioned her, and now she's visiting her grandfather. "Ah," Grandfather says. "Something good?" He sits by the window as he often does at night. He watches the sun out of the world and the stars into it, and sometimes I wonder if he watches the sun come up again. Is it hard to sleep when you know you're almost at the end? Do you not want to miss a moment, even those that would otherwise seem dull and unremarkable? In the night, the colors wash away, gray and black take over. Now and then a bright pinprick of light flashes as a street lamp lights up. The air train tracks, dull in the daylight, look like beautiful glowing paths above the ground now that their evening lights have been turned on. As I watch, an air train rushes past, carrying people along in its white and lighted space. "Something strange," I say, and Grandfather puts down his fork. He is eating a piece of something called pie, which I have never actually tasted, but it looks delicious. I wish that it weren't against the rules for him to share his food with me. Another rule. What is it? Can't share food. "Everything's fine. I'm still matched to Xander," I say. "I've learned from the society that this is the way to give news. Reassurance first, all else after." But there was an error with my microcard. When I went to view it, Xander's face vanished, and I saw someone else. "You saw someone else?" I nod, trying not to look too hard at the food on his dish. The flakiness of the sugared crust, which reminds me of crystals on the edge of snow. The red-stained berries smeared across the plate, ripe and surely full of taste. The words I've said cling to my mind like the pastry does to the heavy silver fork. I saw someone else. "What did you feel when you saw that other boy's face come up on the screen?" Grandfather asks kindly, putting his hand on mine. "Were you worried?" "A little," I say. "I was confused, because I know the second boy, too." Grandfather's eyebrows curve in surprise. "You do?" "It's Kai Markham," I tell him. "Patrick and Ada's son. He lives in Maple Tree Borough down the street from me." "What explanation did the official give you for the mistake?" "It wasn't a mistake by the society," I say. "The society doesn't make mistakes." "Of course not," Grandfather says, his tone measured and even. "People do, though." That's what the official thinks must have happened. She thinks someone must have altered my microcard and put Kai's face on there. "Why?" Grandfather wonders. "She thinks it was some kind of cruel joke because," I lower my voice even further, "because of Kai's status. He's an aberration. Grandfather pushes out of his chair, knocking his tray to the ground. I'm surprised to see how thin he's growing, but he stands straight as a tree. There was a picture of an aberration as your match? Just for a moment, I say, trying to reassure him. But it was an error. Xander's my match. This other boy wasn't even in the matching pool at all. Grandfather doesn't sit down, even though I remain in my chair, hoping to calm him, to make him see that it is all right. Did they say why he was classified that way? His father did something, I say. It wasn't Kai's fault. And it isn't. I know it. And Grandfather knows it. The officials would have never allowed the adoption if Kai himself had been a threat. Grandfather looks at the plate where it clattered from the tray onto the floor. I move to pick it up, but he stops me. No, he says, his voice sharp, and then he bends creakily, as if he were made of old wood, an old tree, stiff wooden joints. He pushes the last pieces of the food back onto the plate and then looks at me with his clear eyes. Nothing stiff about them. They are alive, full of movement. I don't like it, he says. Why would someone change your microcard? Grandfather, I say, please sit down. It's a prank, and they'll find out who did it and take care of everything. An official from the matching department said so herself. I wish I hadn't told him. Why did I think there would be comfort in telling? But now there is. That poor boy, Grandfather says, his voice sad. He's been marked through no fault of his own. Do you know him well? We're friendly, but not close. I see him sometimes during free rec hours on Saturdays, I explained. He received his permanent work position a year ago, and so I don't see him much anymore. And what is his work position? I hesitate to tell Grandfather because it's such a dismal one. We were all surprised when Kai received such a lowly assignment, since Patrick and Ada are well respected. He works at the Nutrition Disposal Center. Grandfather makes a grimace. That's hard, unfulfilling work. I know, I say. I've noticed that in spite of the gloves that the workers wear, Kai's hands are permanently red from the heat of the water, the machines, but he doesn't complain. And the official let you tell me all this? Grandfather asks. Yes, I say. I asked her if I could tell one person, you. Grandfather's eyes gleam mischievously. Because the dead can't talk? No, I say. I love Grandfather's jokes, but I can't joke back. Not about this. It's coming too quickly. I'll miss him too much. I wanted to tell you because I knew you'd understand. Ah, Grandfather says, raising his eyebrows in a wry expression. And did I? Now, I am laughing a little. Not as well as I'd hoped. You acted like my parents would have if I told them. Of course I did, he says. I want to protect you. Not always, I think, raising my eyebrows back at him. Grandfather's the one who finally made me stop sitting at the edge of the pool. He joined us there one summer day and asked, "What is she doing?" "It's what she always does," Xander said. "Can't she swim?" Grandfather asked, and I glared at him because I could speak for myself. He knew that. "She can," Xander said. "She just doesn't like to do it." "I don't like the jumping in part," I informed Grandfather. "I see," he said. "What about the diving board?" "Especially not that."